Hello, everybody. Thanks to be here. This morning we will have 3 talks. The first one from Klaus Miesenberger from Linz, Austria. Is here. And the second one from Maurice Grinberg from Sofia, Bulgaria. And the third one from Dominique, who is talking to his phone. And no, I'm joking. So actually, we just celebrated right here 50 years of cognitive science at CHArt on November 17 and 18, last November. And I would like to say that, as you know, of course, cognitive science, which is the core of the lab, aims to describe, explain, simulate, etc., the mechanisms of human reasoning. And understanding these mechanisms should therefore make it possible, among other things, of course, to, let's say, propose solutions and to supplement deficient functions in people with disabilities. And so that's what we are going to talk this morning with our 3 talks. So, Salvatore, if you want to.
Now, just to add that we're a little bit late. I think we will be able to follow the schedule. We have a pause at 10:40, and then I hope that before 1 o'clock we will finish. No, okay. Yes, so let me introduce the first speaker, Klaus Miesenberger, with the speech Easy Reading, a framework for cognitive web accessibility.
Okay, good morning. You know my face, you know my name, you know my bank account number, everything, so that's fine. No more need to introduce myself. I would like to talk about a research activity which we are doing since several years, which tries to provide a better user experience to people with cognitive disabilities when they are reaching out into the digital world. You can imagine accessibility. We know, I think we all aware about that, has been at focus for more than 20 years. The web, I think, do you know about the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines of the World Wide Web Consortium? Who does not know it? Yeah, okay. So a bit background information, web accessibility. The World Wide Web Consortium is the standardization body for the internet at a global level. And they have 4 groups, and one of these groups focuses on accessibility, allowing people with disabilities to take part. One issue over the last 20 years, or the issues were very much focused on vision, how to allow access as a vision impaired person, on hearing impairment, how to provide alternatives for those who have problems hearing content on the web, getting access to it. And of course, operating with the content, how to deal with internet content if you're not able to use the keyboard, the mouse, or things like that. But the issue of cognitive accessibility was always a bit behind that. And this is the issue which we focus on with this easy reading initiative. And It is not a ready-made market product. It is a framework which invites a lot of researchers to consider this could be a domain where I'm interested in and where I could contribute also activities. So let's start with this. These are the guys who, so to say, are guilty that I can present easy reading here. My colleagues, I have the privilege at my university in Austria that we can employ people with severe cognitive disabilities as co-researchers. This is considerably unusual at the university when you go to the rector and say, I have a person who has an IQ most probably below 50, but he is the ideal person for me to do research with. And this was really a challenge to convince the university, but we managed. The story behind this, with our regional administration, we have a close cooperation. And one day, a high-level administrative came to me and asked me, I'm so frustrated when we do evaluation of the quality of our services, which we are paying for people with cognitive disabilities, the result is always everything is perfect. The next day, when I come to my office, I have complaining emails, telephones, parents are calling, everybody is calling. There is such a lot of things are wrong. What should we do? And I asked her, whom do you ask when you do your quality evaluation? And I said, yeah, the administration, because we are not able to talk to people with cognitive disabilities. We don't have the skills. And I said, would it be interesting we develop a quality evaluation procedure, which at a peer-to-peer level, that people with cognitive disabilities are trained, that they do the quality evaluation to themselves, that they talk to people with cognitive disabilities about that. And this allowed me to get the money. We established this training for these people. These were the first colleagues who did this peer-to-peer quality evaluation. And so to say, with this, we have them as colleagues at university. They go out to every organization in our region. They do interviews with people with cognitive disabilities, how they feel, how the quality is of the services which they get. They do the statistical analysis together with us, and they do the presentation to the administration, to the organizations for people with disabilities. And so to say, they got a job in their own domain. And step by step, we developed their profile of skills further. And the last one became then that they become co-researchers. They are researchers at the same level. They define the research goals, activities, which we do at our institute. And this project, which I will present today, which I'm presenting today, this is based on their ideas, based on their considerations, what is needed for me as a user with a cognitive disability when I reach out into the internet. What do I need and how should the services be provided? As time is short, I will be very fast about cognitive accessibility. Who is it? Whom are we talking about? Intellectual disabilities, of course, is the first thing we are thinking about according to the World Health definition. But a lot of other disorders might be the reason that people have problems in accessing and using general web content which is out there. Developmental disorders, attention deficit disorder, reading problems like dyslexia or even dyspraxia or dyscalculia. Autism issues might cause problems in accessing the content, mental health disorders, language skills problems, those who are not very good in speaking the language where they are in. For me, for example, when I access a French web page, wow, that's often a challenge for me. And of course, also other comorbidities, like, for example, auditory disabilities lead to a problem that you have lower language skills and that you have problem in accessing content on the web. What it is, they have problems in perceiving, reading, understanding, writing, calculating, focusing on a task, managing a task, memory issues, managing the time which might be needed, managing choices and things like that. There are numerous of studies about where these core problems for people with disabilities are. I don't want to go into the details here. And this is exactly what I mentioned at the beginning on what this World Wide Web Consortium, W3C, and the Web Accessibility Initiative is focusing on. They base, so to say, the understandability as a core criterion of the internet, of course, first of all, on the other accessibility criteria, perceivable, as I said before, the content should be perceivable, independent if I access it visually or with text-to-speech output or haptic if I use a braille display or things like that. Second, operable. You should be able to manage and navigate and enter content and interact with the content independent of your skills in using the keyboard, the mouse, or other things. You might use other assistive technologies. And the third one is good understandability of the content which is there. And the issues, arise, is the content legible? This deals with colors, this deals with contrast, this deals with font selection, this deals with size, this deals with spacing of characters, spacing of words, spacing of lines, and arrangements, different framings, different areas of the screen to be arranged. There is a good bunch. There are worldwide accepted and even in legislation referenced standard, which is called Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. 2.1 is the standard, which also here in France, all over Europe. The European Accessibility Act is based, I would say, 95% on this work, which is ongoing in the World Wide Web Consortium since more than 25 years. The issue of understandability of people with disabilities, of course, goes ask for something like icon disabilities, and the text is very well perceivable, operating, and well layouted, but nevertheless he doesn't understand. He needs a different content. You have to do the authoring, which might be, for example, annotating the content with additional symbols, or perhaps with a video, with an audio file, what allows him, he gets the core meaning of the content, what is needed. This is no longer, in my opinion, pure accessibility. It's a bit more, it is about authoring of the content. This is very individual. The knowledge space, the understanding space of the user is a very individual thing. And therefore, we cannot be sure if we are reworking a content for cognitive accessibility that this guarantees that everybody understands it. Because personalization of the content is needed to guarantee cognitive accessibility. And this means it is very often not something we can expect from the author of a web page content. Somebody in the administration, somebody in a company, somebody in an organization who is authoring web content, we can't be sure, we cannot guarantee that this person is really able to do this, because this is so specialized knowledge. And I always say we should be happy if these people are able to make the basic accessibility issues of providing an alternative text and making the interface tabbable. And we already know that I would say 95% of the web pages do not fulfill this criteria. And when we come along with such specialized requests, I always have the feeling we ask for the wrong thing. These are not the people who are able to do this. On the other hand, there are service providers for people with disabilities. It is their job. They understand the user, they work with the users, but what they are missing are the technical skills that they would be able to do this reauthoring. And this is one thing which we wanted to address, what I learned, what we learned from our end users, and what we would like to address with the easy reading framework. The state of the art, I don't want to go into details here, what we have, are very, at the moment, for cognitive accessibility. This is a recent publication of the World Wide Web Consortium of the Cognitive Accessibility Working Group. And these are 9 very general guidelines, which should be respected by content authors for cognitive accessibility. They are published. But when you look at them, help users understand what things are and how to use them. Of course, but what does it mean in my actual situation? We miss criteria, clear criteria. We miss tools which would support us. We miss tools which would help to evaluate a text. Is it really in line with the requirements and so on? Help users to focus. How to do it, what technique could I use and so on. I don't go into the details here, but what we identify is a key issue that we are very short still in terms of having very clear, good support for cognitive accessibility. And as I said, and what I try now to bring into the discussion of the World Wide Web Consortium, that a clear definition is made. What is the responsibility of the content author, of the general author? What is the responsibility of a service provider? And what is the responsibility of the user in terms of having assistive technology at hand, which could help? This is an introduction, and based on this, we jumped into the development of a tool which should help users with cognitive disabilities when they are surfing the web, when they are reaching out into the internet or doing their stuff, for taking part in the digital society. As said, we developed a research methodology, and the students here in one of my talks, which I had the last days, I talked about this user inclusive participatory action research for users with cognitive disabilities. We did and we do a lot of work in developing and adapting research methodologies that users with cognitive disabilities can take part in the research activities themselves. And so to say, with this, we have a very user-centered approach. The ideas, the concept of the easy reading framework is based on the ideas of 3 groups, 1 group in Sweden, 1 group in Germany, and 1 group at our university. Everywhere we had co-researchers who took part in every step of the development process. And what we learned from our end users and what they outlined were 3 things. The first thing, cognitive accessibility is not really respected on the web. It's not really respected in the legislation, in the directives and so on, simply as said before, due to the fact we don't know how to do it because it's very personal. The second thing is that there is a big challenge. We can't expect this from mainstream. We made a lot of trials with our co-researchers, and we asked designers in agencies or whatever, make a web page understandable to me. And we learned, no, the result is always, this is not what I need. This is not what I need. So to say, we can't expect, and this refers to this role model, which I said before, we have to have a clear distinction. What has to be done by the different players network. And the third thing which we learned, which was a bit surprising for us, was a paradoxon. There are, of course, in the organizations for people with cognitive disabilities, a considerable amount of services. Most of them are focused on translating content into read language. This is done very frequently as a service. I don't know, but I'm sure that this is also available here in France. The issue is what we learned from our co-researchers. They said, this is wonderful, but I want to work with the original web content. I don't want to be delegated to a special page where information is provided for me. I want to use the same content as everybody else. And I think from a cognitive science and psychological view, there is a lot in this, because what does it mean when you are always delegated to content and easy to read? You learn another language. You are only able to cope with this language. You do not have a learning effect that you will get better and better in understanding the information. And this means the more services you get, which intend inclusion, the more you get separated and isolated, because you're only understanding translated content. You get dependent, more and more dependent. Of course, like with drugs, of course they are good and you feel well, but in the end, you are addicted and you are more and more separated. And this was really a surprising result of working with our co-researchers. We want to have these services, we need them, but we have to have them at the original. And therefore, our, so to say, general requirements where we develop something which gives access to the content at the original only when it is needed. I might be able to cope with the one or the other sentence, but there is one word, there's one abstract, there's one concept which I don't understand, and there I need the information. And I need it once, perhaps, 2 times, 3 times, but the 4th time, I don't need it any longer. I want to work with the original content. I would like to have this flexibility. This was the core wish which we became from our co-researchers. They defined very clearly, this is the way how we would like to interact with content. And it should be usable everywhere. We do not want to be dependent on having always the same, having always the restriction to the few pages which are translated to our requirements. And therefore, one requirement finally was also, even in our group of 8 co-researchers, we very soon learned they have different requirements. They also want to have a layer of personalization. They want to adapt the content to their personal needs. Wow, what a challenge. How can we fulfill this? They want to all have a personal web support which allows them reaching out. And what is it doing now? And this is a architecture of the system which we developed. And so to say, the architecture where we think and where we were able to prove that this is a stable approach which could allow better access to web content for people with cognitive disabilities at the original, but providing the services which they are used to, which can be done by professionals. The first part, eye tracking, I put a bit aside. I'm happy to confess we failed here. The idea was we wanted to develop a system, and we're still doing research on that. We want to detect by eye tracking where, when reading content on the web, on a screen, where has a user problems? Where's the reading flow interrupted? And at that point, we consider to provide a symbol, a translation of text and annotation directly when we recognize here the reader has problems. We were very enthusiastic about, we were able to have a prototype. The issue is, in the end, everybody turns it off. It's annoying. It is disturbing. So I confess we are not yet there. You guys, you students in the background, if somebody is interested in this topic, this is a hot and interesting research topics, eye tracking, awareness-based computing, where is a user focusing and providing support, assistive functionalities at that point where the user is actually working. The second part are the clients. We provide a client which injects, you see here the engines, translation engines, support engines, automatic translation, easy to read, automatic symbol annotation, automatic video invocation and things like that. These engines, when the user calls them up, he gets for a selected text, for a selected part, he gets support which might be useful for him later on to cope with the content. This is available in the web browser as a browser plugin. I will demonstrate it in a few minutes. I take the risk, I do a demonstration, a live demonstration. What can always fail. And the second or the third one is the carer backdoor. We have a simple editing system which allows professionals. I talked about this role model. We want to include service providers for people with cognitive disabilities who know exactly what is the requirement of, what are the requirements of these groups, and they can do by hand manual adaptations of content which are injected in the moment when the user reaches out to a web page, and then, so to say, allow them to better cope with particular content. What it is, I jump over this one. This is very fast, an initial setup which you're doing, and when you are there, you go out to a web page here, Wikipedia, everybody knows, and then the question was how to interface, how should we provide access to the services, and the co-researchers came up with the idea, we would like to have a very simple and small symbol representing easy reading. And one of them is a designer. He has he suffers from trisomy, but he is very skilled in designing logos and things like that. And he said this easy reading tool is like a chameleon. Whenever the content changes or when my needs change, then also the content changes. And therefore he proposed this chameleon as a logo for easy reading. And when you are logged into easy reading and you click on it, then Salvatore is doing something. Then a menu pops up of support services which are available, which you can click on. And for example, you can adapt the layout. You might say these features are available in every browser. Yes, but people with cognitive disabilities don't find them. They are somewhere hidden in the menu or whatever. We make them available always at the same place with the same click and restricted functionalities for our target groups. And then functionalities like symbol invocation. We have cloud services. You go to a web page, you click on a text, and we send the text to a cloud-based service, and it looks up for symbols which are out there and injects on the web page directly the symbol for better understandability. This is a feature where we still need a lot of work. We are integrating at the moment a system called globalsymbols.com, which is a collection at the moment, I think about 14 different symbol systems which are out there and which can be used. The issue is symbol usage is again a very personal thing, and therefore service providers can also include their own service collections which they are using with end users. And we try and work in artificial intelligence on features for automatic translation of content in easy to read. We are not there, it's not perfect, but again, with our back door for the carers, we make a proposal of a text which can be checked by experts and then can be published. And when the user is clicking on this, he gets these translated text presented to him. And this framework, so to say, allows adaptation, annotation, and translation of content for personalized use. This is shortly, before I go into the demo, the backend. You can select a certain text as you see it here around with a pen. Then with this, you get into an editor. You can edit and write the adapted version. And with this, the user can switch between the original text and the easy to read version, but he stays at the original content as everybody else. So to say, he's not delegated to a specialized page or perhaps even a printed version of content which he might use. And so now let's try and see if I'm able to demonstrate what we developed and where we invite that other people join us and support us. So I go simply to the web page, a web page which is at least known to one person in this room, second person in this room. This is the conference which will be organized next year here at this university, and a user with cognitive disabilities, the AAAT conference, and a user with cognitive disabilities might have problems in understanding this text. For researchers, we tend to do the contrary. We try to make text easy to understand and easy to read. Researchers have a talent to say often very simple things in very complex languages, and therefore they are the ideal experimenting environments for our tool, of course.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you see here the chameleon. I logged into, I have this browser plugin, and when you click on this, you get a bunch of services. I have to put this away. A bunch of services which can be used. For example, you read the text, but you might have problems in reading the text and making, when it is a longer text, making the sense out of it. And for a lot of them, it might be helpful to get it spoken to them.
The 17th International Conference of the Association for the Advancement of Assistive Technology in Europe, 8, will take place.
But everything is spoken all the time. The user decides, I'm not able to have to read this part of the text, so I click on the speech and he gets it. Again, not something what would be new. Text-to-speech is available since years, but most of the time, people with cognitive disabilities don't find it. It's not installed, and their service environment is not able to support them in this way. And they find it always, wherever they go with the web page, they see the chameleon and it comes in and they could use speech support. And next issue is the overview of the page. It's well structured, it's fine, but very often people with cognitive disabilities still have problems focusing on reading. And one mode which was proposed by our co-researchers and turns out to be one of the most intensively used features is the main content feature. This is a feature, it searches, whatever web page you go, this feature searches for the main content of the web page, takes away all the graphics and everything, selects a good contrast and brings the text into a reading mode where you define the spacing, where you define the fonts which you are using, which are ideal for you. And then you can focus on reading for a moment. You are still on the original page, but now I focus on reading. When I'm done, I go back to the web page. I'm in the world like everybody else, and I can communicate with others. These services exist since years, but the issue is when you do this, you lose, so to say, the skills step by step that you can deal with such standard web pages. With this feature, you go into the reading mode, but you still learn to cope with the original content. And that's what they want. That's what they told us. We don't want to be delegated always to these special layouted web pages, which are made for us, because then we lose the skills totally to cope with original content. And with this, for example, we were surprised how many such a feature like a ruler to be able to keep reading in a line. How many people make use of this? They simply have, when they are reading fast, the problem that they lose the line. And this is available here, but also in the original page, you can define the height and so on, a feature which exists since years. But our target group, they don't find it, they don't know where it is. And in particular, organizations for people with cognitive disabilities are not yet there that they would be able to provide these services. And therefore, we integrated it as a standard feature here. Okay, yeah, of course, you can increase the line, you can decrease the spacing, the sizes, features which everybody knows, but in the end, the target group has to find it. If you send them to the menu and the settings of the browser, they are lost. You would need ages to teach them, and they would be frustrated. But with this, they have it in the way they are used to, and it's not a lot. We try to restrict it to 6 to 8 of such features, with help them to get started. And then we have a feature, also as said before, that you can get additional help when you have problems, for example, with a word. Conference might be not known to you, you click on it, and then you get a symbol. Or you don't understand what privacy means, and you get your symbol. These are symbols which are now derived from globalsymbols.com. But for every user, we can define a profile, and the individual symbol set can be stored in the background, and the user gets, for each word where there is a definition of a symbol, he gets the symbol which he prefers for understanding. This could also be private photos. Some organizations do not work with such symbol collections. They make pictures, relatives, friends, house, or whatever, and develop a language concept based on their personalized picture collections. We are open towards that. It's not my decision to decide for them what they want to use. They can store it in the background and can use it as well here for better cognitive accessibility. Or we can also look for definitions. Determination might be a complex word. This is a definition. When I click on it, then I get here the wiki definition. And together with a Spanish organization, we are working at the moment, and we try to form a European-wide consortium to develop a dictionary in easy language. So our goal is to have about 800 words in every language defined in an easy language, that it is not, so to say, the dictionary speak, but it is more an easy to understand version of an explanation of a word. And of course, a feature which is helpful is translation. AWS or Amazon translation feature. You click on a text and it's translated in French. If you have problems with the English original, of course you want to learn English, but nevertheless, in some cases it might be better. But it might be better to have it in the original language, and with this you can do this, but you can always switch back to the original. So this is a first selection of features. And the framework, therefore we call it a framework, we invite people to work on additional features which might be helpful. The translation engine, for example, what does not work at the moment, because we have some technical issues, is to make a full text translated into symbol language. We had a cooperation with IBM, but they stopped some features, so we are interrupted here. There are a lot of issues, but this is what we want to do. And I show you now, finally, the last thing, which is the content translation by a professional. As said, these automatic engines still fail at a lot of levels. And therefore, our end users said, and end user organizations, which we involved also in the development, they said, we need something which allows us at the original also to re-author content. And that's what we did with another plugin. I changed the browser. I'm now in Chrome. You click on this here, and then you get a pen which allows you to select the text where you want to work on an easy version. Let's use the first paragraph here. And you get the text displayed here. I delete it. I should write easy as the easy version. Give it a name. As always, we test. And then we save it. And we have now the possibility, or the end user has the possibility live to change from one version to the other. Not these three words which I use. A professional would make an annotated, well layouted version of this, which is understandable for a person with cognitive disabilities. When I go back now, and when I'm lucky, when I reload the page here, then I see live. I see this symbol here as well for an easy to read version, and I can switch also to the easy to read version in my own browser. So let's say Firefox would be the version of a person with cognitive disabilities. Imagine a situation where a person with cognitive disabilities is in school or on the job and needs immediately, very importantly, information which he has to understand. What you have to do now is to send it forward and backward till this is done and so on. If this is web-based information, he can send, this is our goal, what we would like to develop. You have a service provider, you send a request automatically by clicking there. The service provider is doing the translation, publishes the information, and 10 minutes later, you have the information which you need. What a efficient support workflow you could generate for people with cognitive disabilities, that they get at the moment, when needed, exactly the information which is needed. It might be a contractual situation, it might be a job-related situation or whatever, and the service provider which they have could provide these services which he actually needs according to his requirements. So this is pretty much what I wanted to present to you. Anything else? Well, I forgot. I don't think so. Yeah, so what we have is a framework which allows further research, development, and implementation of a system, or not a system alone, but services which include service providers for people with cognitive disabilities, content owners, authors, and day-to-day practice of people with cognitive disabilities, that they get the help which they need, where they want it, whenever they want it, and only when it is needed, that it is not annoying for them. And in particular, and most importantly, their wish, we want to stay at the original content as everybody else. Come and get involved. What we have to do is updating. Chrome technology is changing. We want to establish a open source corporation of people interested in this domain. We are working at the moment at integrating globalsymbols.com. We need more talent, we need more support in the AI-based translation into easy to read and symbol translations. You might know about symbol languages which are out there. It might be even Bliss or whatever. Automatic translation of text into Bliss, which might be useful. Such features would be great if they could be integrated. You saw the editor for reauthoring content, which I presented. This needs to be much better. We would like to have a fully fledged editor which allows to select symbols, which allows to select text snippets and things like that. A lot of work has to go into this. And we want to work on a much better personalization approach for user management, support the providers, supporting the end users and content owners. This is what we would love to see, that we can build up such an open source and free cooperating community to improve the quality, to improve the accessibility for users with cognitive disabilities. With this, thank you very much for your attention. I do hope that this was of interest for you, and perhaps the one or the other is willing to download and experiment with the easy reading framework. It's available for free at www.easyreading.eu. And whenever you have questions, of course, I'm more than happy to answer them, be it now or when you send me an email or when you call me. Thank you.
Thank you for the free advertisement for the conference. Yeah.
Any questions?
I have a question, maybe a naive one. Because you have several people, co-researchers that you mentioned. Have you found what are the individual problems which is there any problems they get when they read some content? Because it might be the case that some kind of specialization will be a kind of more optimal way, because their problems can be quite different. I don't know if this is the case, but probably can you tell more about the problems these individuals have? Are they similar? Is it, let's say, a problem on the content, or each of them has a specific problem that
For fairness, I have to say these problems are really very individual. We discovered with one colleague, how should I say, he learned to benefit from cognitive disabilities. He was, so to say, much brighter than everybody thought in the world. What he really had was much more an attention problem. So to say, he was not able to focus for more than 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds. And we learned with him, if we were able to break down problems and tasks into very small chunks, he had an enormous speed to fulfill the task. Was able to do that. Other people had problems in reading. They always wanted to see much more pictures and things like that. Others had problems when there were a lot of pictures because they were the attention was taken away. So you have, how should I say, you have a beehive of issues, but when you look there, they organize them very well, and you have to learn to cope with it. What is very, very important is that you can use the potential of digital media, that you can switch fast between text and audio, that you fast can switch from presenting information with text to pictures, that you can arrange pictures. It's very beneficial. We employed then a colleague who is excellent in drawing, who was always sitting beside our sessions, and he draw figures. They agreed on figures or whatever what they need, and he draw all the concepts which we developed. And he was able to take part in this and contribute in this way. I'm not able to say there's one single approach for a user. It's flexibility and openness, and therefore also the need always to cooperate with the end user organizations where they come from. They often have only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people who understand the need. Otherwise, you have to learn it for weeks or months that you understand the user requirements. And to include them also into the process is one of the issues. As said, this role, service providers for people with cognitive disabilities play a crucial role here. Yeah.
Thank you very much. It was very interesting. I was thinking about the problem that you encounter when you try to do the eye tracking. And you say that it was difficult because this is very interesting for personalization, right? The key point. So it made me think it made me think to an effect that you probably know well, that is the Midas touch effect.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe what the Midas touch effect is that accidentally, by looking or stopping on a word, you activate the words, and so a window pop up. So start to become very annoying when, for example, during the reading, you just stop because not because you don't understand the word, but because you are tired or you're just thinking something else, or you have a pop out. And maybe just make it intentional in the sense that I look there and then I blink my eyes when I want to activate the words or the pop out. Did you try it like this? Or
We tried it as well with blinking, and then we had the other effect around. So we did not finish it. I have to confess, we did not finish. What we had then is always, why doesn't it react? Why doesn't it react?
who, the system
The end
or
users.
the
The
user?
end users tried, yeah.
Yeah.
We were able to define different activities of the user. It could be a mouse click, it could be a gesture, it could be eye blinking. So the with a webcam, you can well detect an intended eye blinking and unintended eye blinking. But so to say, we never came to a satisfactory result. And I have to say, we gave up at that point because we had to finish the project. It was a new project. And so far, we were not able to go further. We would love to make such experiments because we think there is a lot in it also for other application scenarios, not only for people with cognitive disabilities. This emotional or intentional computing in general or interaction would be very good. We did not experiment more.
Thank you again for your presentation. Just a question, because when you showed the website of the I can in my mind that there are some systems for automatic summarization of text.
Yes.
I don't know if because I think this kind of stuff can really fit the system. I don't know if you ever tried or even if it exists some specific summarization system.
Yes.
For people with special needs, maybe.
Yes, we are working at the moment. There is one, I don't remember the name now. One student is now working on the integration of an automatic summarization tool into Easy Reading. It's a student in the UK. So they are working themselves on this summarization. And this is exactly what we want to do, because what we can provide is a proven interaction concept for people with cognitive disabilities. And yes, exactly such summarization tools and everything should be experimented and should be integrated. Whenever you have such we call it engine. Yeah. If there is an engine, we have a user interface that you can do very fast testing and bring it out to the end users, because the concept of easy reading is understood by the end users in a very fast manner. Yeah.
And then about you said the text is from researcher, maybe complicated, but it's also maybe complicated because a lot of people are not native English speakers.
Absolutely.
As we are.
Yeah.
Some are better than others, but then when you, so I wonder in what respect your engine of safety is efficient with not very well formed text. I mean, it's written by somebody who don't know very well the language. Does it make it more difficult for a mistake, or the contrary? Does it?
The easy to read translation. I could say most probably the closer it is to a standard English, the better it is, level 3 or whatever they call it. But I have to confess, we don't know it. We did not have the mass of data for the AI that I could say this or this version would be better. And it's always, it understands better. The AI model understands better where it gets more examples. So if I have more examples from English written by non-natives, then it gets better there than by the original, and therefore that's what we are missing, the mass data. We try to convince those who hold the data, the mass data, we try to convince them that we get access to that, but so far we were not successful, that we could feed masses of such data.
Yeah. Do you have a massive corpus of text written by non-speakers? It's I6HP proceedings from 1990 to now. It's
absolutely, yeah. Yeah. But actually, the translation engine is Amazon AWS, and this is really good at all levels. Because, like for the IT industry, they have these masses of data which you need. But for easy to read, in Austria, we have now a cooperation with an organization called Capital. They have about 25,000 examples of translated content and easy to read and original content. And this is all what we have. If we get 25,000 more and there 100,000 more and so on, if there would be a corporation that we could feed and feed and feed content into the system, then the easy to read translation would become better.
So you said that there is a system where professional transcribers, whatever, can add some labels, some text in easy to read professionally. Is this automatically included in the system to improve the learning?
Yes. So this is stored everywhere. What I stored now, this is stored on our server as one pair, original, because you define exactly what is the original and what is the translation, and this goes into our database. But we don't have masses of users yet.
Of course. Okay, thank you very much. I heard something which was looking like a proposal for student interns.
Yeah.
Donc, s'il y a des étudiants de M2 qui cherchent des stages et qui sont intéressés par ce projet, vous ne devez pas le laisser partir avant de leur parler. I said we should not leave you go before speaking to you if they are looking for an interview. Je crois qu'il y a une question qui est ouverte maintenant. So it's time for a break. C'est quoi, c'est break 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and we are back with Maurice. 15. Allô, on reprend. Okay, so the second part of this seminar, we start now. We'll hear first Professor Grinberg, Maurice Grinberg from the new Bulgarian University. Professor of Cognitive Science.
Thank you. So I'm very pleased to be here. I have been invited by the Doctor, sorry, English. Completely mixed. So probably I'll shift from one to the other during my talk. So thank you for the invitation. I'm here leading on an Erasmus agreement between our universities, and our universities are within an alliance of research universities, EUR, but nevertheless it's implemented by Erasmus Visit, so I'm very happy to be here. My area of research is a little bit distant even from what I'm going to present. I hope that it will be interesting for you, for the students and the professors here. This is my main concern because I'm not so well acquainted with your program. So it might be the case that some things are completely known to you, but maybe not. So in order to be on the safe side, I have a huge amount of slides. But I have also my timer, so I hope that it will be interesting for you. So my domain related to being a co-founder of an NGO in Bulgaria, which deals with assistive technology for augmentative and alternative communication. It is something that I was in for the last 8 years. And at the same time, it all started from the New Bulgarian University, where one of the first, actually the first program in cognitive science, master's program in cognitive science started many years ago, so almost 20 years ago. It was a cognitive science program for Eastern and Central Europe, for Turkey, for Greece, for Macedonia, North Macedonia, etc., etc. So this is when we had something related to Center of Excellence project, where we could acquire an eye tracker, and I understood that you work with, or you design maybe eye trackers. And at some point, parents in Bulgaria started contacting us saying, okay, we are interested in the keyword eye tracker, because we know that children who don't have fine motor skills, they can benefit from this technology, which is used abroad. And little by little, we were interested, we were aware, but at some point there were parents who said, but you should do something, because you're the only ones in Bulgaria. And we started with this NGO, and our hope was not really, we didn't realize what we are starting, and we are getting involved with. But our idea was to share this technology with the SLPs, to share this technology with psychologists, occupational therapists, and then everything else we expected is known and done well. But this was not the case. So we started with rising awareness, translating the acronym AAC in Bulgarian. So this is one of our main contributions. And then we started contacting all stakeholders in order to make everybody aware, from families, from some users to ministries, ministers, etc., that this is something extremely important. And we could build a network of stakeholders that now has grown quite well from all these stakeholders. And at the end, I'll say a few words about our conferences that we have organized during the last 5 years. That might be interesting for some of you, especially the 2 last conferences. So at the New Bulgarian University, as I mentioned, in the Research Center for Cognitive Sciences, have been director of the Usability Lab for almost 20 years. Now it's has another name, it's Behavioral Science Lab right now. And what we could do within this effort to raise awareness about AAC and raise the qualification of professional were courses that we could introduce with a big struggle over several years that now are taught in our SLT bachelor's program, and are also qualification programs related to inclusive education, occupational therapy. So we are dealing with a lot of activities related to this, but as you know well, and I know that within this domain, everybody knows the CRPD, the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, where during the years I started understanding that everything is written in the sense. So during the last conference, we tried to do something about violence against children with complex communication needs. And once again, we asked the people who are quite advanced in this domain. They said everything is written in the CLP. And it was the case. So they have edited a book on this topic in order to accelerate this process. And actually, they heavily rely on this document. But what I'm mainly concerned today with my talk is communication. And once again, when people discuss what type of AAC tools or AT tools are available, sometimes they don't think about the end user, about what is the real problem with the end user. And I know many people who are professionals in AT, assistive technologies, who think that AAC is one of those technologies, and there is nothing specific about it, which of course is not true. And you can see what is written in Article 24. It is the idea that people should be able to communicate using alternative languages, namely graphic symbolic languages, and that they are on equal footing with any other language. And in 2016, the committee working with this convention actually realizes that regarding Article 24, which is one of the most important for education, actually states parties are failing to make appropriate provision. And this is something that is a problem still today. So maybe some of you know about ISAC. This is an international society for AAC, which started in 1983, its activities in order to bring technologies, and any kind of technologies we are dealing with, to people that need them. And this process is still kind of revolutionary and romantic today. And we know this because people come to our conference and they still say that this problem is not solved. Of course, in countries like France, UK, the States, it's much more advanced, and Norway, of course, and Sweden, but in countries like Bulgaria or Serbia or Romania, or countries from Central and Eastern Europe, it is far, far from the level in more developed countries. And overall, even what is in more developed countries is not the full story about AAC. I hope that you know about the Communication Bill of Rights. For some people, it's surprising. Some professionals, SLPs, believe that AAC is just a temporary tool that has to be used during meals, for instance, or in some specific settings when somebody is asked about something and it's communication board and this somebody points, and then this is the way because it's not needed anymore. This is a kind of model. You probably know about the models of disabilities. I discussed this with somebody, so probably it is very well known from this medical model where people with disabilities, including people with communicative needs, are considered as patients in general, treated in specialized institutions. So it is a very recent past for Bulgaria. It's maybe 20 years old when specialized institutions were kind of dismantled, but not completed. And therefore, all this went through the social model where the problem is not in the person with specific impairments, but it is in society because there's no environment. Assistive technologies must be there, must be supported, etc., etc. And now, obviously, we are living in the model of the human rights when we consider this. So people have the right to communicate, to express themselves, to be informed, etc. So you can see this Bill of Rights where it's very, very popular. Probably you know about it. So some of the target groups of users who can benefit from AAC specifically and AT for access to computer. This is amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, the Stephen Hawking disease, as some people call it. Spinal cord injuries, aphasia, cerebral palsy, which this is a group of people which is very, very interested in AAC. Then Rett syndrome, which again is not so well known, but this is, for instance, the syndrome where For instance, eye tracking is prescribed from the very beginning because there are no other way for children with Rett syndrome. Autism, of course, Parkinson, and muscular dystrophy. And I won't present Stephen Hawking. I don't know if you have watched this video, which is on AAC. So he's sharing, he has his opinions on AAC. And I don't have much time, so I'm not going to play the video, but just say a few things that he mentions there, but you have the address. So he's sharing that people who cannot speak live in a great time. And this is a great time because of technologies. So because now there are TTS, text-to-speech softwares, there are these switches. He's using the switch and used the switch for all his life, not an eye tracker or eye gaze control. And he's joking about the timbre of the voice. He's joking about the fact that he can type about 20 to 30 words in a minute, which is much less than what the person speaking can produce. And that basically this should improve. But anyway, he's very happy, and he mentions his book, which is something well known to everybody, and says that he wouldn't have written it without this technology. And you know, everything. So. Okay, and so actually AAC and systems of AAC are usually, it is the case, for instance, with cerebral palsy, that usually you have fine motor impairments and also communicative needs. So it is something that is used together. And some of the examples that I'm going to give and something that we have done during the last 3 years is related to these most severe situations where you have this combination of severe motor disabilities and speech impairments. And if not supported by software, by appropriate professionals who can basically enrich the vocabulary and deal with communication situations that are important, then usually these children, at least in Bulgaria, they live with their families for many years. And sometimes there are professionals who advise them not to look for support or help, not to look for AAC, and therefore some of them become 20 years old before they realize that something can be done, and actually it's very difficult to do this then. So a number of how important these people with this condition that I mentioned are. So in general, this is a kind of average estimated 1.5% of the world population can benefit from AAC. So it means about 100 million, and in Bulgaria it's 100,000 people. So the formal definition that you probably know, but nevertheless, just to start somewhere, AAC are methods for communication which replace or supplement speech or writing as means of communication. And lately, a lot of attention has been paid to to assistive technology in general. So this is the global cooperation on assistive technology of the World Health Organization, which started some years ago. The realization being that many people in the world don't have access to this technology, and this problem has to be solved, especially in countries who have signed the CRPD. And also, more recently, there is this Global Alliance of Assistive Technology Organizations, which started the assessment of how, what is the impact of this technology, because in which countries this technology is available, even it's sent by post, if I believe my friends from Norway, but 30% is not used. The problem of abandonment is there because something is missing in these systems. And so you see here this priority assistive products list that will be kind of imposed to our governments. And out of it, there are some items that belong to AAC and some of them to access to computer. And I'll just remind you what it looks like, what it looked in the past. So low-tech AAC, laminated symbols, they're still being used today. So even if people are using computers and sophisticated softwares, there are situations when these computers are not available or cannot be used. So usually you have a copy of these laminated copies that are still used. And the big problem here is not to know how to laminate. The big problem is what to put on these boards, because this is a big gap in the qualification of professionals, not knowing how to create such tools for children and for adults. So you can have very simple things. So this is from Communicator 5. It's in Bulgarian, so that maybe none of you understands, and just you can guess what the symbol means. It's a good exercise. I also have difficulties, but I have the words in Bulgarian. So the high-tech, which is probably of more interest to you, is related to several kinds of softwares, and of course you can have various systems. And of course, they are very convenient because you can adapt them, use tens of thousands of symbols because it's a language, it's a vocabulary of a person. So all this must be available in the most direct fashion. And of course, we have synthesized speech, which, as Stephen Hawking puts it, is a game changer, although his accent is thin and Irish, as judges see 20 years ago. Nowadays, this effect is much, these voices are very good. So these are specialized devices that have become popular in the last, I don't know, 10 years maybe, which are with specific, they're strong, they're medical devices, and so we have a lot of with very strong speakers in order to be able to speak in noisy environment, because the idea is that it's always with the user and it should be used in all environments. Otherwise, it's not really providing the possibility to speak. So communication via text and the alternative access to computer, hand movement tracking, which some groups of users prefer to eye tracking, some communities, and overall, some of them quite old, but this is an old slide, but this is why. So you have the hand tracker, the switches, various kinds, and also this device here is for the tongue. It was a device by a university, I think in Norway or in Danish University. So all these, they are very minor of these devices, so you can do very small movements of your thumb or a finger, or with your tongue, with a piercing that you can move on. This is the screen of the computer that it is. It's small, and you can move the mouse. So this is brain to computer interfaces, of course. So these are more modern devices, integrated specialized devices with these screens in front of the other communication partner, so that when people communicate, one of them is not behind the other, which is kind of pleasant, but it's in front of the other. So these are small things, but they became available relatively recently. And this is the eye tracking, which nowadays is kind of widespread with very good possibilities. And so in general, when we discuss the most severe cases, physical impairments, motor impairments plus communicative impairments, usually there is that a system, a high-tech AAC system with alternative access to computer must be available. And this is something that is compiled from the, let's say, most used softwares and hardwares these days. The most important part of such a system is communication and teaching software, like BoardMaker 7, Communicator 5, Grid 3, and text-to-speech. Then you have very interesting for children who just start with eye tracking or attention, concentration, choice making, etc., which are without any instructions, which these children in some cases cannot understand. Maybe they're very young in the beginning, or maybe they have some cognitive impairments. So there are kind of games which make children play by using their eye gaze. So they cover the screen, They can follow objects that can move faster and faster and become smaller and smaller. So you basically have some hierarchies, several known hierarchies of levels, where you can start from not knowing that you can do anything with your eyes, up to being very, very efficient with your eyes and select very small objects and follow easily without being tired. So they are very important as an early intervention tool. And sometimes also they have some diagnostics incorporated, so you can have small movies where the children actually what part of the screen they attended, etc., etc. And then comes the other part of the system, which is some kind of device, some method of alternative access to computer, eye tracking, or something else, and very importantly, the positioning of the system, because many users of such systems have difficulties in being in good body position, and some of them are in beds for most of their lives. So you need to position very well such system, because once again they are intended to be used the whole. Okay, so something that I don't know may be interesting for you is this idea. So what is communication? If you ask some professionals in Bulgaria, most of them don't have a very clear idea and don't distinguish very well communication from learning. And this is one of the big problems that we have had, to start being aware that people don't distinguish this. So for instance, if you show them a communication board, some more older, let's say, not in any bad sense of the word, people who have worked many years, they say, so what we did a training with you to understand that all our lives we have done AC. So the idea was, when they explained, is that they use some kind of boards for the alphabet, in order for children to learn the alphabet, or to learn fruits, or to learn about animals. So actually they point to something and ask, what is this? And children reply, and this is something, for them, this is a communication situation. It is partly one, but it is not exactly the same. So the big problem within AAC is not the tools also, and I'll say a few words afterward, my opinion, of course, about the problems with the tools, but it's basically the understanding what is communication, and how exactly what will be the role of this technology in the everyday life of people who need it. So the idea is that some analysis must be done about the communication situation during the day. Situations must be planned by professionals. Situations must be scaffolded by people. They must be organized in order for people, children with complex communication needs to start communicating in the important situations for them. It's not only about eating and drinking, which sometimes is the area of choice for everyone, because people believe that this is very important, and it is, but there are many others. And so here are some goals according to Gianni's slide, and there is a book, maybe some of you know this book, AAC by Boykeman and co-authors over the year. The last edition, unfortunately, Boykeman passed away, was issued in 2020. So this is the Bible of AAC in general, from the point of view of practitioners. And there you can find what communication goals a person can have. So this is expression of needs and wants. Most important, that writes first, it's humor, sharing or exchange of information. This is the most important, because one of the things that people like very much about AAC and access technology to computer is when children spontaneously say something. This is really a kind of moment of big joy of the parents and of the people who work with them, because the most interesting content of what we have to say is not only to us. So we need to be able to do so. So social closeness is very important, social etiquette, because it makes us part of some group and we can communicate, and also internal dialogues that have also the need to be recorded in some way, or something must be done. So I'm just providing this table for you to have a look, to see what is how all communication situations are analyzed. So, for instance, the expression of needs and wants, the goal is to regulate the behavior of another person to satisfy a need or want. Focus, direct attention, the joint attention, then some information is exchanged, and so there are several conditions that you have in the various kinds of communications. And so for each of them, you need to design specific tools, and these tools must basically be take into account the specifics of this type of communication. So, for instance, in certain communication situations, let's take, for instance, eating or meals or dinner, it's kind of structured usually, and it is predictive. If this is the case, this situation is kind of simple. And in other situations where there is a sharing of information, this is not the case, and therefore much more must be invested so that people can share information with you, with their relatives and friends, without them knowing what this information will be. And I have interesting videos about a young girl who in Bulgaria is the only girl who is in school, inclusive education system, not on an individual program. She's actually in a class of people. This is the only example, unfortunately. And at some point when she was younger, she was trying to tell us something using the system, which was not adapted to anything. It was communicator 5 with a general tool for adult communication. And basically, her idea was to tell us that at her village and close to her hometown, the cat they had there had kittens, and that there are 4 or 5. She insisted to say 4 or 5, and that one of them is black. So this is a kind of not such a sophisticated complex message, but it took her about 5 minutes. She's really very good at this tool, and you can really see the thinking process, how she is trying to fetch this information to us by putting together surprising symbols. But at the end of the day, this was something that we understood, and she was very happy with it. So you have this type of analysis, which is very important. So you have content. When it is about the need, the content is important. When it is about social closeness, it's not so important. So there are many subtleties here that make communication successful. They are not trivial at all. And actually, it's a kind of constant work that has to be done by the professionals who are responsible into that. So this is Stephen Hawking again with his AAC system. And here are other people that within the AAC community are well known. And the fact that there are not so many people that are well known, or that in general much of attention is paid to them, means that not everybody has access to a proper usage of technology. And Catherine Lebler, she's well known. She, I think, graduated. She has now probably a doctoral degree. She's working in the university where she's consulting people who need this technology. Sarah Ezekiel is also well known. She's a painter using her eyes for many years now to do some very nice drawing. And in Bulgaria, we have Angela Pencheva, who actually is with cerebral palsy, about a year. And actually, she started playing in, she's actress, playing in a kind of troupe, a theatrical troupe. And she also wrote an autobiographical book. And it was very interesting that she always used her mother as an auxiliary to communicate. So her mother was starting to cite the alphabet, and she's stopping her by a signal. And this is the way how she communicated. And at some point, she started using the night tracker, and she started writing extremely surprising and wonderful things. She started writing poetry. Writing poetry was not possible via her mother because it was love poetry. and it seemed that she has more than 100 verses that she wrote poems, which are most of them are love poems. And now this split between her mother and her was really dramatic. So this is how she wrote her book. Can you guess why she's using this weight? You are from computer science department, so it should be an easy question. Yes, she did so with this, and then she has just the movement of her thumb, left hand, so she can do one at a time. Actually, she wrote her book for 3 years. And now she's, when she has a night tracker, she become a little bit more lazy. And she says, I have time, one day I call this. So, although the idea for us was that Bulgaria is a kind of poor country and AAC is not known, so maybe there is a better world where it is known, everything is fine. And this is at that time when we were commissioned by EASPD. This is the European Association of the Social Services Providers, maybe for persons with disabilities. And they wanted to inquire if high-tech in general, not only AAC or access to computer devices, are used in Europe. So we tried to answer this question. It was not very successful, although we had 9 languages, everything was translated in 9 languages. We couldn't recruit participants. It turned out to be a very, very complicated process. And so we had to group them a little bit arbitrarily. So the idea was that there is Central Europe, Hungary, Croatia, Poland, Eastern Europe, Bulgaria, Latvia, and Romania, Northern Europe, UK, Germany, France, Austria, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Finland, and the Netherlands, and Southern Spain, Greece, and Italy. So we have a kind of decent number of participants, but probably one day this has to be done again. So there are many data. It's a big report that you can find what it is. You could find at the ESPD website for the publications, but nevertheless, the differences of Northern Europe, France included, was kind of there. So the problems were a little bit smaller. But the average grades that they gave using a Likert scale, starting from 1, I disagree completely, to 7, I completely agree with the problem. Actually, for instance, in the northern country, for some of the problems, the ones that are here, it was above the middle. So it was about 4.5, for instance. Like this. So here the results are average. And to our surprise, the financial barriers are not statistically different from training barriers and qualified professional barriers. And so then come the resource, family knowledge and skills barriers, environmental barriers, and legislation. This is another group. So basically the first 3 indistinguishable are financial, training, and qualified professionals. And it turns out that this is the biggest problem in this field. There was a conference some years ago organized again by the SPD about inclusive education and how people from, let's say, more specialized institutions or environments or centers will move to the general school and who will basically welcome them there. So if teachers that teach in these schools, they can use AAC at all. And it's a big problem. It's not obvious how this is going to happen, although the idea is extremely good. So now, in the remaining of my time, I will also share the results of a project that we started some years ago. It's funded by the European Science Fund, Operational Program Human Resources, and it's called Development of Communication Skills and Learning for Children and Youth with Severe Speech and Motor Impairments via AAC with gaze control. So I started with this. I presented you with the system of AAC, which actually is aimed at users with these impairments. So this project was aimed in Bulgaria after the institutionalization. So the special schools where children with disabilities were kept under horrible, shameful conditions. So there was funding, and they will move to very nice homes. So it's here the white small villas where about 10 to 12 children started living. Actually, they were called residential centers, called like residential home-like centers. So we started visiting some of these centers in the country, and actually we realized that part of the children, they had buses which take them to local schools or other centers where they have school and schooling and everything. But there is a small number of children that are in such a bad condition, physical condition, that they cannot leave these centers. They stay there for years. And in the beginning, when we went to such places and we demonstrated and started speaking about the capabilities of AAC, the directors were like, what do you want from us? We don't have such children, this one. And after a while, after half an hour, they said, yes, but maybe you're speaking of a child we have on the second floor. This child is there on a bed for 2 years. And we said, yes, these are the children. And they said, but you can do anything. You can do nothing. So this was our inspiration. And the idea was to have systems which are well positioned and that we can enter 6 actually centers, and professionals were trained to start doing something. But in order for them not to, let's say, to have difficult tasks in order to deal with the software because they were not so well qualified, the idea was to prepare for them a program with everything developed and just to train them how to use this with these children. So the idea was children with impaired or missing communication, partial or missing education, delays in language and cognitive development, and the idea was to have a program, materials for 3 years, basically we planned them, because our idea was that this program must cover from the first year, from typical cognitive development, to the 3rd year. These are the 3 years when children are not well supported by the system. So nobody works with them, they're with their families, and then they have their diagnosis, sometimes up to the 5th year, and then they go to some centers, and they start quite late. So the idea was to have something to fill in the gaps in what they know about the world and their conceptual and linguistic competencies. So we worked with 34 children, professionals work, we trained them, and in 6 such centers, the idea was for each child to have 100 sessions over 2 years and a little bit more in order to see any progress. So with the full system, the idea is if a child basically has concentration or attention problem, it starts with such training to acquire competencies in eye tracking, for instance. So this is one such case where actually, if you look carefully, in this bed there are 2 children. So the other is on the other side, and basically they spend their day there. So at night they are put to sleep. Otherwise, they are fed here. Nobody takes any care except for meals and hygiene, something like this, but not any kind of education. So this is part of such a session where you have this special mounting, where you have the eye tracker and everything, and you can make these children play, and they enjoyed it very much. So they couldn't advance very much, but nevertheless, it is something that we are always saying to professionals, even if they enjoy themselves, if this is something amusing, this is much better than lying in this bed all their lives and watching the series. So everything was implemented using these 2 relatively wide spread softwares, Grid 3 and Communicator 5. These are one of the most well developed. And we had several modules: language and conceptual development, quantity notions and simple mathematical skills, basic literacy for reading and writing, and communication skills. And they were divided into modules, and the language and conceptual development module has basic concepts, And then, you know, in AAC, when people use, for instance, some kind of system to communicate, sometimes it is a good idea to start with photographs, as was mentioned in the previous lecture. Then you go to some pictures that can be quite elaborate, and then you go to symbols, when symbols stand for a kind of words, a kind of symbolic type of expression, which afterwards allows for generalization and increasing the vocabulary. Because the vocabulary of a person using symbols can be the same as the vocabulary of a person using speech. There is no difference, but it must be there and organized. So the idea is that some of these exercises are organized from, first of all, everything starts with photographs, then some pictures, that they're mixed somehow, and then we go to symbols. So you can see some of them: basic colors, shapes, size, spatial relations. Here you have the numbers of the page sets that can be implemented. They're interactive, they are not static. So, for instance, communicator 5, this might be interesting, maybe you know about it, has some programming tools inside, so you can really do something to some extent interactive, automatic, which is interesting. So that's why most of them are there. And so the idea, for instance, with colors is, first of all, we start with the prescriptions of the mental psychologists, which colors must be introduced first. There are simple colors, basic colors, children can explore them. The good thing about eye tracking and text-to-speech is that they can just look around and hear the names of the colors. And it's a win-win, changing stimuli. And then little by little, you need to abstract the color as a kind of feature, so that many various objects can have the same color, or the one and the same object, type of object, can have different colors. So we start with such objects, which once again, when the child attempts with her gaze, you can hear a yellow banana, for instance, so blue jacket, etc. So there are many of them. In order to have this experience, then you introduce a color, and this color can be a feature of various objects. It must be shown here. It's a fork or a rope or a balloon. Then we have tasks: find the rose rope, and the child finds it, and then there is another task, and another task, and another task, and a kind of sound or other stimulation as a win. So find what is different. So I'm going to go through them a bit more faster, and find the same by color, and sometimes the objects by the same color are different. So it's a kind of higher level of understanding what the color is. Then the communication with symbols, it's part of this module. The module that is, you have the concept, you have the words for it, because children who communicate with symbols, they must understand the words, spoken words, and relate them to the symbols. Basically, around us, you have some objects that can be grouped in categories, and of course, you need to know the symbols for these categories. Okay, and so we have done some research. My colleague Christopher has done this research for Bulgaria. What are the instances, the typical instances of the basic categories, in order for this tool to be kind of close to the real day life in Bulgaria, so that really the knowledge space is covered by the tool. So from our cognitive scientific point of view, the idea was that these children have very small experience in the world, because usually they live with grandparents, or they live in a specific center for many years. They haven't seen the world, nobody explained them, they cannot ask anything. So the idea was that they have probably deficiency in this conceptual space, and therefore we need to fill it in. So there are many such exercises which are gradual, which mix concrete objects with symbols, and I'm just showing them. So this is addition, how addition is introduced with object, and then we have, of course, a module for communication, which is intermixed with all these learning activities, so that children can comment on the activities. Okay, so the basic literacy, we'll skip it, it's more traditional. So we published a guide, a book that is freely distributed among professionals so that they can use this system. This system can be downloaded by parents, they can use it with their children, we consult them for free. And of course, for professionals, because they are so non-qualified, it's a job, they have to pay for training in order to get this system. But anyway, it is there. And we did also a book, a guide for AAC technology, which was funded by UNICEF. And now it has been translated in English for the UNICEF Central Office for Europe and Central Asia. And it will be distributed across the countries emergent in AAC. So there you have a kind of introduction, detailed introduction in AAC. But additionally, you have a catalog of modern products which you can consult. You can go to the sites of the free and commercial as well. You can watch videos, you have links for videos in order to figure out what it is about with very detailed description, target groups, etc. etc. Okay, so I'm finishing with 2 minutes late. The idea is that there are kind of tools that you can use. Our impression is that when you start using them, there are limitations. So this is maybe something that can interest you because there are tools from a very specific market, just to use a cynical word for it. And this specific market is fed by the social system, is fed by very restricted customers. And therefore, it's not the open market, the software of tools, it's my impression. And sometimes for tools like Communicator 5, which has this nice programming capabilities, although limited, they start to restrict them because SLPs cannot use them anyway, which of course limits the possibilities. Okay, something important. Yeah. I'm at the end, sorry. So some suggestions. So this is an important topic. There are huge advances in AI and robotics in many domains. And the idea would be that the group of people with communicative needs, or many others who need assistive technologies, must be kind of privileged in this respect. Because one idea would be that anything new that is kind of interesting and powerful is first used with people who need it. And this can basically substitute the fear of AI with something that is very, very humanistic and very nice. And so I will finish with words of Stephen Hawking. These days, your technology can solve our problems, and then some solutions may not only erase physical or mental deficit, but leave patients better off than able-bodied folks. The person who has a disability today may have a super ability tomorrow. So, thank you.
Si, peut-être.
Merci beaucoup. Est-ce qu'il y a des questions?
So I have two questions. The first one is, are the teachers, for example, in the center, allowed to add some personal courses on the app to more efficiently target the children? And the second one is, do you guys gather some data from the courses in order to have an eye on whether the children are improving themselves or not?
Yeah, those questions are wonderful. So the first is related to if the software allows you to make individual things. Well, this is a must, so this is central to AAC. There are no general purpose apart from some tools that are done. But if it is an individual AAC system, it must be unique for the user, it must be adapted to the needs, and usually people who are doing the assessment, they analyze what are the situations that have to be prioritized, what is needed for these situations, what has to be achieved. So there is a whole elaborate assessment system, and these tools allow to do it. But at the same time, they have some limitations because, once again, my explanation is that somehow people think, okay, but this is okay for children with these problems. Why do better? And this thinking comes from the past, I think, but nevertheless you can feel it. Sometimes people say, well, but why invest so much? This can be heard still today. And the second question? Please?
Second was is, are you gathering data?
Yeah, yeah. So unfortunately, it was COVID time. The idea was that all these SLPs, let's say colleges that work, they were writing protocols session after session in order to see progress. And actually, it couldn't happen so well. We had several cases where this progress was there, but because these children were in these home-like centers, they came from the institutionalization process, and sometimes people working there don't know who they are, don't know what is their condition. So in a sense, they really have real problems. Progress was not very big, but in some cases it was quite substantial, and basically these children could do this for several months, and they did this. Some of them was not exactly the case, but it's like that.
D'autres questions?
En vrai, moi,
Ça m'étonnait.
Non. Non, c'est plutôt pour dire on a des étudiants, non? Ici, vous êtes en train de voir plein de choses. Les aimants, parce que les M2 ont déjà commencé à travailler dans leur projet, non? Il y a plein de choses qu'on peut imaginer de faire dans la prochaine année, un master 2, dans le cadre des projets. Okay? Donc, essayez de capturer des idées éventuellement. Okay? Tu as déjà un problème. Hein? Non, pardon. Non, c'est pas. Pardon. Je mets de blonde, je vais regarder. Donc, une chose qui est sortie était par rapport à l'accessibilité au coût de certaines technologies, non? Vu qu'on est à l'université, on peut utiliser pour faire des solutions open source. Avec les Master 2, on avait réfléchi à un certain moment, cette année, par exemple, à mettre en place le système de avec hacker pour communiquer les personnes avec, par exemple, la sclérose latérale amyotrophique, non? Je le jette là. On verra la semaine prochaine. Faire un système comme ça, open source, ça pourrait être très intéressant. C'est dit que les systèmes qui sont super chers. Peut-être juste avec une caméra qui va faire la part. So now, I don't know if I have to introduce you, but we will have our last talk from Dominique Archambault. So please, Dominique.
Right now. Okay, so I will try to be a bit short to try to be a bit short. It's not my specialty. Try to go through the schedule. So I won't spend too much time presenting myself. Most of you know me. Today I'm going to talk about the design of augmented tactile books for blind children. This is the concept of augmented tactile books that we have been introducing a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, with an association called Les Doigts qui Rêvent, with which we collaborate since now about 20 years. So first, I want to say that this research starts from a very long time ago. You know somebody on this picture? On this picture?
Okay.
Huh? You know the second one?
Yes.
Je ne suis pas celui qui est en orange. I'm not the one in orange. And this is, you see, 1999, the first paper I made in the international conference CSUN, Los Angeles, talking about adapting tactile book. It was computer game at this time, computer games for blind children, and we were using at this time a device which was called a touchpad. This touchpad, you needed to put a tactile overlay on it, and then the computer could know where you press. A simple device, but at this time it was the only way we could use to detect where somebody would touch on a tactile pad. It was in 1999, so it's more than 20 years ago, actually. And then since 2000, we work with this association. It's actually Les Doigts qui Rêvent. It's editor, an associative editor. So it's associative because the market is too small to make a company. They will not make enough money, and they are creating tactile books for children with visual impairment. And in this small association, nowadays we work with Solène and Sophie, who are my colleagues on this. So this is an example of a book from Les Doigts qui Rêvent. And what you can see on this page is that on the left side, you have some enlarged characters that are designed for partially sighted children. Below it, we have, so sometimes it can be on top of it because it's Braille, so you have the same text in Braille. And on the left, on the right page, you have a snowman, which is designed with textile, and it has more or less the shape. It has the shape of a snowman, but the most interesting thing for blind children it is the tactile effect. So I come back on this. This is so what you can see also. I think you can feel that it's very high quality books that are very well done. But this idea of having a snowman like this is something which comes naturally for sighted people because it's the way we draw, but it's not necessarily natural for people with visual impairment, especially for people who are blind from birth. There is a big difference. As the people who have seen long enough to remember the shapes, etc., it's something very different. If I will show you now a drawing. I draw this, so you can see I'm not a painter, but even if I'm not a very good drawer, everybody, and more or less in every culture I've been, I showed this in Japan, I showed this in different countries, more or less everybody says it's a cat. Okay? I never heard somebody say it's a giraffe or it's like but now if you take this drawing, you put it in tactile, in relief, and with, for instance, with an oven, we have this kind of device at the university, and you show this to blind people, approximately 0% would say, I don't know what it is. They could say it's a balloon, it's whatever, but it would be super difficult because you may have some people who will recognize it because they will have learned that this is the shape that sighted people recognize something, a cat, and they will recognize the hair because there are two triangles, etc. So they will have to do a very analytical work to build a representation, and then finally the one who have learned this. And actually, we are in the Cité des Sciences today, and in the Cité des Sciences years ago, there was somebody who was organizing training for blind people to recognize shapes.
she's retired now, but some people in this room must know that I'm speaking of Rebecca West. So she was working really on this. So with the training, but it's not something that comes up. And why does it come up immediately for every sighted person? It's because globally it is the projection, the flat projection of what they see. Drawing is, and then actually during all the history of painting, the painters have tried to make more and more precise reproduction of what they were seeing until the 19th century. Then came the photo, so they had to do something else, and they started to do abstract things. But during all the history from the beginning of drawing in the caves to the 19th century, people were trying to be more and more close to what they were seeing in drawing. So this is, but a blind person who interacts with a cat will not have access to this shape. The first access, the natural access for a blind person to a cat is the fur and the sound. So the texture, it's not the shape, it's the texture what is important. And of course, the cat can be pictured in some different ways, but with generalization, we will, maybe a kid of a very, very young kid at pre-elementary school will not recognize any drawing of this, but after time, after seeing some thousands in books for kids, they will finally do. While blind children, they will see maybe 10, maybe 40 tactile drawing. And if we say it's about cats, they will see 2 or 3 in their whole childhood. So the generalization cannot work. So the blind access to an image in terms of shape. When I put here in this slide, I put image, which is actually a bit wrong. It's to a shape in relief, a drawing in a red drawing. For blind people, they need to follow lines with their fingers, recognize shapes, build a mental model, and compare with some knowledge they have acquired before. So first, it's a linear access when the site is bidimensional, immediate. Then they need to make a haptic analysis, and they need some learning. For the visual, it's similar to the perception. You have an image match with a huge number of images that have been memorized effortless before. So it is something which is very different. And this is why. So yeah, for the sighted, it's an easy access, an immediate pleasure. Immediate pleasure book. It's a leisure book. Maybe not so nice if it's a physical book, but it's immediate. When for the blind, it's super difficult. So we did not know that at the beginning. We did not thought too much about that at the beginning. So this is an example of some drawing, some tactile drawings that have been made in 1997 for playing with kids. And of course, none of the kids never found out that this was a bear. Oh, bear. But then they could learn. So when we were playing with this, but first we have to know that at this time there was approximately 0 computer games for blind children in France. No, not approximately, exactly. So this was the first they could touch, and then they had a very positive a priori. I think a priori, c'est dit a priori en anglais. They were very positive, and then they were learning. I remember a kid with saying, okay, I touched the dress of the mother bear, and when he knew it was a dress, each time he would say to somebody else, oh, look, this is a dress, and touching the dress, and this is a bear. He could not recognize it before. So then we started to use more this kind of representation. So now it's a sheet of paper where we have sticked some textures. We keep the shape of the animal because there are some sighted people. people around. But even in some other books with Livres, they do a lot of books where you don't have any more the shape of anything. The more difficult was to take the skin of an elephant here. We have also, so the mosquito was made with sandpaper, because it's sandpaper, etc. And then we put this in the tactile board I showed before. And when they were playing, they were hearing the sound of the animal. So as I said before, the first representation they have of a cat is the texture and the sound. So we're trying to do. Okay, so this is the start of this project. So this was books from Livres, but let's go. And then in 2015, one researcher we work with in Lyon is Danielle Valente. She's a psychologist and she's specialist in psychology of perception, and she's real specialty is tactile perception. And she wrote a paper about haptic books for blind children. And this was in this paper, she was showing that additionally to just touching the texture, the children will more engage in the reading of a book, in the understanding of a book, if they are pushed, if they are encouraged to act with the book, to have some. For instance, they can use, like every child actually does for playing. You can use your two of your fingers. L'index and major, I don't know, any second or the third finger as legs, and this becomes an avatar. Well, if it's a computer, in digital world we say an avatar now, but we use a character, and then you can walk with this character, and you can do many things. You can play with kids that have been playing like this. So she's encouraging them to. So she's putting on the page a path, and then the kids walk, and below you have a trampoline, a trampoline, something to jump. And then with this jumper, so it's there is some. It really works. I mean, there is some caoutchouc somewhere in this. Caoutchouc, ça marche. You have stairs also, and you have a swing. Ça c'est vrai. Balançoire, c'est a swing. And with this, she was showing that in this paper, she showed the interest of this for the engagement of the children, for the understanding of the book, etc. And then they are more interested. But this is only paper, cardboard. And then here we came. So I said we were working with Livres since 2000. Danielle made her PhD with Livres during the first part of the 2000s. So we were meeting her from time to time. And then we had this idea to say, okay, we would like to make to associate interactive elements to the tactile illustration in respect to what she was showing, in order to make the tactile discovery more intuitive, to make so the idea was to take what she has done on paper and to add electronics inside and sound, speakers, so we can have sound, and in order to make what we have called augmented tactile book. So it's a tactile book, but with you know, the notion of augmented vision, where you add something to the vision. Here we add something. So the idea also is to decrease the need of mediation by the adult, because of course, even if the shape or the texture is more accurate than when it's only a line, the kids, they will still need to have an adult or somebody anyway to explain what it is, that this is a lion, because usually they have never interacted
the lion when they are in preschool in France. Even it's a bit dangerous to leave them with the lion. So you still have the need of mediation. So with this, we can have less mediation and of course reduce the cognitive load to understand the content. So we made some demonstrators with two interns from Master of Electronics. There's not student from our master this time, student from the Master of Electronics of Dijon, because the Bois is located in Dijon. And they made the first prototype where with me, where we had different, for instance, steps on a page, or flowers that you could caress, just touch. And then, for instance, here, when you walk on the steps that are on the top page here, you will hear those footsteps. And the idea is that you can walk. There was a reset. And then when you touch the flowers, you will hear some sound, just like touching. Here on this one, another page, there's a door. And then when you open the door, you will hear something like that. The noise of the door opening. And then this, so this was to show, this is the page which is open, and inside the page you have some proper connections, and there is, I don't remember which page is this one, but there is probably, here I think there is a all effect. This is one of the pages. There is sometimes all effect sensor that detects magnetism. And this was for the other. I did not show the good page, but on another one we had a mouse with a magnet inside. So when they were putting it closer, you could hear the sound. And in the cover of the book, we have some electronics to make all this work. And this was an old version, so it's an Arduino with. There's a Wi-Fi here, a Wi-Fi circuit, and yeah, some other circuit, a multiplexer probably. And then you have cables that goes to each of the pages. So we started this, and then we had a second prototype where the users could walk. So it's like a path. So when they walk, they hear the footsteps. And then on this one, it's the same. They will walk and they will hear some soft, like they are walking on in the forest on dead leaves. And I don't remember was it. There is something on the border they could touch. And on this one, it was water. So they will hear the footstep. On the when they go to the proper place, it's like they go in a splash of water, and then they will hear water steps instead of normal. So the idea is to have a book where each page has rich tactile illustration, like what I used to do. On top of it, we put some of these illustration are done with connected fabrics, so that are fabrics that contain strings of conductive materials, for instance. There are sensors, like all effect sensors. And so we have, and then this page is connected to a book controller, which is located in the book with a small battery and a microcontroller. And so we can have several pages connected to this microcontroller. And then we have a book companion outside of the book, which contains, so it can be a computer. For the first prototype, it was a computer, but the computer is not so handy to use. So now we use a small box which contains actually a computer. It's a Raspberry. It contains a computer. It contains also some Bluetooth connection, so we can connect a Bluetooth speaker. There is also a plug to put a normal speaker and a bigger battery, and then you can use it with different books. So this is a small box we have.
And with this, so the book controller identifies the page and detects all the interaction and send it so it can be between the book controller and the book companion. We can have a cable, but now we use more Wi-Fi or in between. And the book companion is really implementing the scenario. The book companion can be used with different books. Voilà. So on this project, we had a funding from the Ministry of Culture in France. More funding, but still funding. And we had to do so on this project, we made this technical feasibility with the first interns we had. And then we had the next step was to write a book by an author of books for use, because you know it's very different when it's the computer programmer who is designing a scenario of a book. It might be not so funny for the kids. And so we had Lucy Felix. She's writing stories for these small books that you find in libraries or bookstores, and also journals like Poppy. So we designed a prototype book. We built 10 copies of these books, and then these books were evaluated in 10 different locations in France. For instance, Léo Thébaudière at Augmentative, it's a school for the blind. At Nantes, there's another one. And there are also other places where it's the support centers for kids in inclusive education, so they see them on Leslie or something. And then we made, so this, I was in progress, I should have updated this slide. This was also done. We made a report for the Ministry of Culture, and we are going to deliver it this month. Stop. And then what we want to do next for the next year is to start a small production of this. So it goes really to the so this small book is called Capitaine. So it's more robust than the first. The problem with the first prototype that we were designing with the students were not very solid because it's not their work. So it was working. We could show the effects, but after 10 use, it was not working anymore. So we have been working with a small company which has some experience in designing things that are solid enough for kids. But they did not do anything like that book. So we have Edouard and this company working together. And then we showed the electronics to put. On this book, so in the first page, you have a planet going around the sun. So you can touch the planet and make it go around the sun. If you press the sun, then you will hear something. If you move the planet around, you will hear something different. There are windows here. When you open, when they are closed, it's silent, and when you open it, you hear the sound of outside. And then, well, I will show a video of it later. That's better. So there's an island where different shallow waters, deep waters, sand. So when you step, the footsteps sound different depending on where you are. So in this, so this was really the first part of the project, and we had the idea to add more action on the pages. For instance, adding vibrators. We wanted so the study of the usage by the student was done by our colleague in psychology. This is not us. And then our idea is to have, as we need to have a companion, as I said, we would like to create collections of books. But there is a problem at some point, is that when we've been working with Lucy to make these books, we needed to explain her what she could do, what was all the sensors, all the things that we could implement on the pages. but she's not a technician at all. Okay? And I am not an author at all. So the problem is that we can make a demo or something, but each time she has an idea, she needs to talk to the engineer to say, well, is this possible? And then, you know, it looks magic like that, but there are tables, so you cannot put 25,000 sensors on the same pages. Actually, you cannot put 10 either, because you need to have cables, and you cannot put too many cables. So there are some limitations in the number of things that we can put on the page. So there are a lot of technical things that are really boring for the author. And then this is breaking the creation process, because each time she has an idea, she needs to do it. So the next idea was to work on an editor which would simulate the book on the screen, and where the user the author then could put some virtual object on the page and simulate it on the screen. That the book, the software could say, this can work, this cannot work, you already have too many cables, for instance, or whatever. And then we proposed this so there is a first lock here on the design part, on the computer science part, is that this editor needs to have a lot of information in a certain format, and this is pretty new. So actually the modeling of all the environment, of all the stuff that can be moved for each kind. So actually what we do is that for each kind of interaction, like footsteps, for instance, so we want to have a space where we can do footsteps. So for this space, you need to specify what has to be behind, that the author don't need to know, but the computer has to know it. And then how many connections you need for that, and what is the size, and whatever. So then we can have several interactions like that, like opening a door or whatever. And then we need to have some complicated modeling. So this is some research in computer science for modeling this all this information in order to be able to create an editor where the author just say, okay, I need a space where people can walk. So I put it on this page, and that's all I do. And then when I want to try it, I use a mouse, or maybe we put it on the tablet, and then they can play with the figures on the tablet, whatever. So there can be different possibilities, but the user, so the author is not don't have to ask anything to the engineer, just use this, and then the output will be what? The output will be the map for the electronics, the map for the tactile design, and the software. So this is something which we started. So we proposed to have a PhD. We made an application for a PhD funding for that, and we have been working also in the beginning of the modelization for this with an intern of our master. Yacine est derrière là-bas, and Yacine was doing the beginning of the modelization at this point, and he also had new ideas to add things in the books. And then we asked for a PhD application, and then he had this funding for a PhD. So now the work is starting with Yacine. He started to, so ça fait 2 mois. Hein? PhD started since 2 months. We don't have the software yet. Qu'est-ce que tu fais? And this is in progress, but we hope to have this, and it's really an interesting work. So the goal at the end will be that an author, but any kind of author, can create some contents. Of course, they will need to be made physically by a technician at the end, but then on the screen. But it can be an author, like I said, but it can also be an educator which thinks about an exercise that could work for their kids. It can be a psychomotricien. I'm sure the orthophonist here will have quickly ideas of how we could do that. J'espère. It can be an occupational therapist, ergothérapeute, can also find some ideas. I should that can be interesting to make kids do find psychomotricity to girls to learn how to walk. So yeah, there are plenty of possible ideas behind that. So quickly. Quickly, this is the first prototype we've done ever. I need to check if the sound is forwarded to people. Share sound. One. Another place where we need to have ergonomics is in the Zoom company for doing their Zoom.
Petite démo, il faut que tu allumes l'interrupteur.
Il n'y a pas de son.
Voilà. Ici, bien vérifier que la lumière soit rouge. Et après, il faut aller donc chercher le réseau Wi-Fi Capi.
Bah oui, mais alors...
Ils ont le son. Sans le son après.
Et après.
Oui, non, ouais. Ça, j'en doute pas. Parce que je l'aurais mis, mais par contre, je me repose dans tous les. Mais du coup, il est envoyé sur le son de Zoom. Là, il me met default sync Zoom combine device.
Tu peux y aller.
Ah bon.
Parce que tu n'as pas un peu. Non.
Ah non, mais d'habitude, ça. Parce que là, si on joue sur plusieurs.
Ah, si, sur le
en fait, on
fait un
entend.
partage du bureau, il doit reprendre le son.
Non, ça c'est le bureau. Ah non, c'est lui, c'est le mec. C'est parce que j'ai déjà fait ça, ça marchait d'habitude.
Partager le desktop 1, ça va marcher.
Là, mais je suis un petit peu. Il n'y a pas trop les amis, ça marche.
C'est qui lit l'histoire? L'ordinateur?
C'est l'ordinateur qui lit l'histoire. Bon, bah là, en fait.
Alors, si le pantalon est trop grand, vous pourrez le refaire des ourlets.
Vas-y.
Parce que il y avait des livres comme ça pour les enfants. Pas comme ça, mais soit pour les tout petits, il y a des matières à toucher. Voilà. Et puis, il y a aussi des audiobooks, des audiolivres. Je me souviens, mes enfants en avaient un, c'était tout un plastique, et puis tu mettais comme des failles, des histoires différentes. Et ça, on avait 2 livres. Hein. Donc, les histoires sont des histoires toujours assez simples. J'imagine qu'un appareil n'est pas là.
Ah, il faut un peu de travail.
Mais voilà. Mais et puis, il y a toujours des actions. C'est très. Il doit y avoir forcément des actions. On ne peut pas raconter un essai de philosophie. Enfants, qu'est-ce que c'est le temps? Je ne sais pas.
Là, c'est pour les enfants de maternelle. Hein.
Oui, voilà.
Je sais pas préciser ça. C'est pour les enfants de maternelle, et puis après, on peut avoir des contenus pour des. On pense à des contenus pour le primaire.
Je veux bien que tu refermes et que tu ailles sur la page tapis.
En académie, en maternelle.
Ce que je veux dire, c'est que je me demande.
Tu n'es pas obligé de remettre le pantalon, mais danse plus longtemps en fait.
Saisir vraiment quelle est
Tu peux sauter un peu
la
partout.
nécessité de mettre tout ce qui dit dans le bouquin, c'est pour avoir un retour. Parce qu'il y a le groupe expert, l'ordinateur, il te raconte l'histoire. L'enfant, tout. Mais à quoi ça sert?
Mais vous n'entendez pas. Donc ça permet d'incarner le personnage. Parce que quand tu marches sur la page,
c'est une notion d'engagement un peu.
Mais tu vas pas entendre les parents. Tu vas entendre tes pas. C'est ça, tu vas entendre tout ça. Et si tu fais rien, tu vas pas entendre. C'est ça, tu vas entendre au moment où tu fais un pas. Et si tu marches dans l'autre, tu entends tout.
On est clairement sur l'engagement.
Ok, voilà.
Donc, l'électronique, elle permet
Merci Anaïs.
de récupérer
Petite
les
démo.
événements que
Il faut
fait
que
l'enfant
tu
sur la
allumes
page.
l'interrupteur qui est.
Et puis,
Si.
et ensuite de jouer les sons
Bien
correspondants.
vérifier que la lumière soit
Quand il
rouge.
ouvre la fenêtre, on entend le son
Et
extérieur.
après, il faut aller.
Mais s'il n'ouvre pas la fenêtre, on n'entend pas le son
Chercher.
extérieur.
Tu joues sur ce qu'on
Le
appelle
réseau
l'engagement
Wi-Fi
psycho.
Capi.
Exactement ça, c'est la notion d'engagement.
Et la synchronisation par exemple.
Ouais, alors il y a des moments où de la musique, et donc ils peuvent. Il y a un départ que l'enfant est amené à danser sur un tapis. Il y a un moment, on a peut-être vu ici en passé, il y a un moment où elle utilise
Ciel,
un.
donc tous les petits carrés blancs.
Alors ça,
sont
c'est
blancs.
la fin, c'est pour montrer qu'on utilise, qu'on récupère des données. On disait ça tout à l'heure. On récupère plein de données pour les analyser après en version production par la suite. On ne le fera plus, hein, mais là, comme on a des travaux dessus, on fait. Et donc,
Le comment est ajusté par exemple, l'ordinateur. Et
là, elle met le petit pantalon. Ça, c'est pour rajouter dans l'engagement. Alors après, il y a des problèmes de taille. Bon. Mais elle met le petit pantalon et puis elle va jouer avec, elle va danser sur le tapis, sur celui-là.
par exemple, comment l'enfant interprète un verbe.
Alors, si le pantalon est trop grand, vous pourrez le refaire des ourlets.
Tourner.
Voilà.
Est-ce que il va vraiment interpréter le sens qu'il marche doucement? Est-ce qu'il a un feedback sur le doucement?
Ah oui, s'il marche doucement, il entendra les pas doucement.
Oui, mais si dans le texte il est indiqué Pierre marchait doucement parce qu'il avait peur de faire de bruit.
Et après, lui, il le fait vite.
Et lui, il le fait vite, en sautant. Et comment
Imaginez un feedback qui dit.
Ça dépend de l'histoire. Après, c'est le scénario.
On va imaginer un feedback où on dirait va plus doucement, le loup va te voir, j'en sais rien.
Ça, c'est les.
C'est une interprétation.
Ça, c'est dans l'idée dont j'ai besoin. Mais on peut le faire. Pour l'instant, on n'a pas implémenté ça.
Tu fais une structure.
Et nous, on donne une structure. Après, ce qui se passe, c'est qu'à chaque fois qu'on travaille avec les doigts qui restent, il nous dit tiens, on voudrait faire un truc, ça fait pas mal. Alors, on arrive, on montre un truc.
Ah ouais.
Et puis,
C'est bien que tu refermes et que tu ailles sur la page tapis.
On n'a pas encore programmé, parce que non. Mais à chaque fois, c'est intéressant. Alors, il y avait une idée aussi dont je n'ai pas parlé, mais Yacine avait eu, c'est de rajouter un bracelet avec des personnages.
Sauter un peu partout.
Enfin, des personnages et avec un petit aimant. Et donc, en fait, quand tu vas mettre le personnage sur le bracelet, Maurice, quand tu mets le personnage sur le bracelet, il y a un autre personnage dans le même niveau. Et donc, l'interaction ne va pas être le même. Alors, je sais pas, bêtement, tu vois, ça peut être le premier s'il est tout fumé, donc ça fait des tout petits machins, puis après, c'est une gros double. On entend des gros pas si on change de personnage. Ça peut être autre chose, là. Alors, effectivement, l'idée d'après détecter s'il a marché vite quand on est démarché l'enfant, ça, on va pas. Ça, c'est pas encore dans le cahier des charges, mais ça pourrait très bien. C'est pas ça qui est le plus compliqué pour l'instant.
Parce qu'il me semble que pour un apprentissage réel, parler du chat.
Merci Anaïs.
Petite
démo. Il faut que tu allumes l'interrupteur.
Je ne saurais jamais
si. Je vais vérifier que la lumière soit
rouge. Lentement, par l'expérience,
et après, il faut
alors, d'abord, toutes les choses se font en relation avec un éducateur, un adulte, etc. Tous les bouquins, les bouquins simples. Là, pour eux, j'ai dit réduire la médiation de l'adulte. Ça ne veut pas dire la supprimer. On n'est pas dans une optique où on veut faire des systèmes qui suppriment l'accompagnement humain. Donc, l'idée, c'est plutôt de permettre d'être plus autonome. Ça n'empêche pas d'avoir des moments.
Donc, tous les petits carrés blancs sont blancs. Tu peux y aller.
Voilà. Après, simplement, on se base sur des travaux qui ont été publiés dans lesquels Daniel montre que le fait de pousser à interagir sur les pages, au départ, il n'y a pas d'électricité, va être bénéfique pour la compréhension. Après, nous, voilà, on dit, on peut détecter si tu as bien fait, tu n'as pas besoin d'avoir un adulte pour voir s'il tourne, mais par contre, voilà, il va effectivement et là, par exemple, celui-là, on il va partir au début.
Et dernière, excuse-moi, pour une question technique, comme l'enfant interagit et qu'il prend le temps, le compteur s'arrête.
C'est le compteur. Ah, le compteur, tu comptes.
Qui raconte.
Alors, en fait, oui, parce que l'histoire. Alors, on a travaillé avec eux, justement. Au début, il y avait l'histoire. Et puis, finalement, dans la dernière version, ça le lit plus automatiquement, le livre. Après, ça dépend. On peut faire ce qu'on veut. Ça dépend de l'âge de l'enfant. Si c'est lire, on ne va pas lui lire, parce que le mieux, c'est qu'il lit normal. Voilà. Alors, de toute façon, le compteur, quand il lit, mais ça, ça fait partie du scénario, on peut le mettre ou pas, mais quand il lit, il va lire la page. Donc, il va lire la page quand il va l'ouvrir, et puis une fois que la page sera finie d'écrire, il ne va pas tourner en rond.
Mais après, tu peux faire des segments qui dépendent des événements de l'action de l'enfant. C'est tout à fait envisageable.
Oui, on peut même faire. Tu te souviens des bouquins dont vous êtes le héros, là, quand on
Voilà.
Tu disais, puis on te disait, voilà, si tu veux faire ça, tu vas à la page 42, si tu veux faire ça, tu vas à la page 43. Ben, ça, on peut le faire, tu vois. Donc, du coup, tu peux avoir, selon ce qu'a fait l'enfant, si sur la même page, j'ai une fenêtre d'un côté et puis une fenêtre sur le côté où il y a une rivière, une fenêtre sur le côté où il y a une rue, par exemple, parce que je peux avoir deux fenêtres, et puis dans un cas, j'ouvre, j'entends la rivière, dans l'autre cas, j'ouvre, j'entends la rue. Enfin, j'ai une bêtise, parce que normalement, ça peut être tout à coup comme ça. Mais ça peut être. Alors, la limitation, c'est qu'on ne peut pas mettre trop de capteurs sur la même page, parce qu'on est quand même limité par le nombre de câbles qui sont connectés à la couverture. Et voilà. Mais sinon, j'avais fini, en fait.
We talk about creating stories depending on the choices made by the child. Like if he opens this door, there is a story line, and if he does another action, there is like another story.
That's possible. Because there is a question, the idea of
Pour le Zoom, il faudrait peut-être utiliser le micro, parce que là, le sous-titre, il est.
First, well, the idea embodiment with different characters will allow to have different stories. But yes, also there is a possibility, according to what the kids is doing on the page. So for now, it's page by page. So what we can already do in our kids program is that on one page, if you're doing something, it's not. I think for now, what we do, it cannot directly interfere on the second page. But it will not be super complicated to add dans l'implémentation. It's not really. I think I did not do it yet, but it's just changing the code. I mean, very easy. Il y avait une autre question.
The electronic is, and I think always will stay, an issue that you need a technician to implement these cabling and so on. My question is, what I saw so far, the functionalities which you provide is touch.
Yeah.
So you get a touch input and you trace where the thing is. My question is, might there be hope that we have something like a general purpose page where you have the grid, the electron or the cable or the copper relations behind, which might be very cheap, which you have there, and then you can, so to say, produce the different overlays, and with the editor you're working on, you can assign certain activities and so on, a certain event, action or whatever, and so to say, make the author independent, that he can design the story, because you, let's say you buy an empty book with 200 pages, and then you start step by step, you design the book.
Yeah, I showed more or less capacitive tool show. This is, of course, we could have, so for now, in the last prototype of Yacine, we have a space where somebody can put a finger, or two finger, whatever, but when you put a finger, we can know exactly where it is. But this is not the only action that is possible. We also use all effects to detect magnetism, and then we have characters that contain a magnet. So, for instance, in one of the pages, there's a boat that moves. So, and then you have also the possibility, you have these fabrics that change resistance when you fold it. So there might be, so the idea of the model is that we can include new devices easily by defining this device does not exist when we do it, but we can include it. So if some later arrives a new device that we don't know yet, but that allows to make everything, including the coffee, we can probably include it. Well, the idea is to make it as generic possible so we can include it. But for now, I don't know this device existing yet. So when we do it, we will include it.
We have to go to China. I don't know. At the beginning, you were talking about shapes and so on. There was, I think in the 90s, end of the 90s, the discussion about hapticons and tacticons. Has this popped up somewhere, so to say, as a thing that what could be useful for the design of stories that you could use, or so to say that in education, that we know from Tom Tegula in Sweden that they have a very good concept and method of using, it wasn't called hapticon at that time, but so to say, which shape to use in which situations. Is this still an issue, or is this more or less gone?
Yeah, you mean there is a categorization of different shapes, and this I think it's like in France, Johannes made a book. This is a former person who has been teaching in the masters years ago, Michel Brie. He had designed guidelines for tactile things for schools, and they are still in use. So when schools are doing some map, well, you explain what must be the size of the dot for town, or how you must put legends on all this stuff. It's there's a book about it. But with Laboratoire, we don't really use it. This is really for the educative thing. With Laboratoire, it's more on the feeling, so that it does not. They don't go to this kind of. It's more the idea is you want to have to make the kid feel that this is the snowman. So what material will I use? What shape? But when we have some software which allows to design more books and easily, then we can decide to make exercises and then use features and then use categorization, or we can make something more artistic or whatever we want to do. User 55. Il y a une autre question urgente? Bien, j'ai pas. Alors,
why did you put this image?
C'est ça. Une image à la fin.
Even if it has nothing to do with the subject.
Alors si, parce que pour la petite histoire, l'oral n'était pas le même, mais une grosse partie de la présentation, je l'ai présentée à Los Angeles à la conférence CSUN au mois de mars dernier. Et en allant à CSUN, avec Klaus, on a traversé le Nevada, il a fait une partie du Nevada et la Californie.
lui en voiture, moi en moto, et on s'est arrêté, et on a vu ce truc-là à côté de la Death Valley en Californie, dans une vallée montagneuse derrière. Et donc, du coup, à chaque fois que je vais quelque part, je mets une photo de l'endroit où je vais. Et ça, tu pouvais le voir à Pine, comme signe en Californie, c'est assez rigolo.